Amanda Palmer doing Drowning in the Sound on cue. How do you feel now? How do you feel after you do that?
Like I'm happy I don't have to do it again.
Yeah. How do you feel doing it on, like, I know it's one thing doing it here in kind of a controlled environment in the studio. How do you feel when you got to do that one live?
I love it. That's one of my, like, I just started touring this record. I've played 3 shows that are really going to be like the touring stage show, and this is one of my favorites. Because I just, do you ever see the Dresden Dolls?
No, I never saw your band. Where I was from until I was 25.
There was no music.
There was incredible homegrown music because it's an island in the middle of the North Atlantic that no one would go to. So our like big concerts of the year were like Meatloaf and Air Supply. Oh. No disrespect to Meatloaf.
Those are both Meatloaf's pretty awesome.
I know, right? But so I know your band because I like this kind of music. Like I like piano based kind of, I like this kind of music.
Yeah.
It's kind of my thing.
So even though I deeply, deeply love my new record, I love all the songs, I love playing it, but man, I love banging the shit out of a piano. It's just so cathartic.
It looked like it owed you money. Like you were just, you were just $30 back, please, right now.
And when I tour with the Dresden Dolls, I do that for 3 hours. Mm-hmm. And on the Dresden Dolls tours, I really look forward to the like slow, sad songs because I need a break.
Yeah.
But you know, this is a pretty ballad record.
Yeah.
The songs are mid-tempo and under mostly. So I look forward to the "You Owe Me Money" song.
Have you lost a piano yet? Have you had one fall? Really?
The second show in New York, I broke an F string.
Ooh. Those, Keith Jarrett had broken piano, and he came out and did a pretty good job on it.
It happens.
It happens. The reason I ask how you feel by the end of it is partly because of that. I want to know how it feels physically. But like this is, as you mentioned, this is very much a record of your time, a record of you and who you are. I want to know what it feels like to share that much with strangers, with people who maybe fancy, they don't feel like strangers, whatever, but just to have to tell stories that might be challenging even to live in the moment, night after night on stage.
Oh, that's such a good question because I'm just starting. And I mean, I'm going to be on tour with this record for probably 18 months, maybe 2 years. And I'm scared, and I think that's good. Like, I think the fact that I'm kind of scared is a really good sign.
Scared of what?
It's a scary show. Like, it's scary for me. It's scary to get onto a stage and not just entertain people. And my stage show is just like unapologetically balls out. I talk really graphically about getting abortions. I talk about having a miscarriage alone. I stop and slow down and tell the stories and talk about how it felt. And the songs are all woven in there. I mean, it's a really beautiful show. It's like a piece of theater. But it's also, for someone who is like any other artist, musician, sensitive to any kind of criticism, putting this kind of stuff out there is really frightening.
Is that the reason you refer to it as oversharing? So there's a book that accompanies this record that I read last night. It's beautiful, by the way. It's beautiful photography and beautiful writing. And I saw you kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of apologize. Wonder if I'm oversharing a little bit. But like, you don't seem like the kind of person to me, and I just met you, that would have a problem. Well,
sometimes that's like an etiquette thing. I
guess that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm married to a British person who just apologizes for existing.
Right.
And
you're married to?
I'm married to a Brit.
You're married to Neil Gaiman.
I'm married to Neil Gaiman, who happens to be British.
Yeah.
And Neil Gaiman.
Yeah. Who I would say kind of private.
He is. He has such a very different relationship with what he does with what he plunders from his life before he lets you see it.
Right.
He dresses it up in all sorts of costumes, but like it's still the naked person inside. He'll just never let you actually, in there.
So for you feel I want to let it all out, but you feel.
Well, they're two very different and very important art forms. We need costumed fiction and sci-fi as just as much as we need unapologetic memoir, I think. I don't think I would want to live in a world that only had one. I think I'd kill myself. We need the whole spectrum. And, Neil has made a career out of, taking what he sees as reality and what he sees as true and putting it into fiction. And I've sort of made a career out of stripping as much fiction away as possible.
Why? What do you like about that?
Because it's interesting to me. Like, to me, the challenge of my career that sort of keeps calling me is, in the places I go where I'm afraid. Otherwise, I get bored. And I just feel like I keep being called to figure out how much more honest I can be, like without totally losing control of the plot. And also, I've been called there by my community because when I make myself more vulnerable, they respond. And, I don't just mean like my diehard fans who've been there for 20 years, but the more I write and the more I find myself like standing on that edge of vulnerability and going, oh, if I don't want to go in there, that's probably the door I should open.
Yeah.
Those are usually the songs that really speak to people.
Yeah.
So I've learned to listen to that as a cue.
That's I mean, an overused word, but it's a bit of a brave thing to do because you also have to go, I'm letting these people in to closed door Amanda, to I'm in the house, I'm in the living room dealing with this sadness, Amanda. Not really any of their business, but you want to let them in. Scary.
Well, I mean, that's a really interesting thing about being an artist, right? Once you're an artist, what is anyone's business? And especially if you're a woman in 2019 who's dealing with the context of what's allowed to be said, it's pretty interesting. I mean, I had an experience last year that actually like totally changed the trajectory of my record and my stage show, which is I was in London in the right place at the right time, and I saw Hannah Gadsby's show.
The Nanette show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just sat there going like, oh my God, right. You can be an entertainer and simultaneously annihilate an audience with the truth and what they need to hear, maybe. And I just remember thinking like, oh, this is a little bit of a game changer. Maybe I should try harder, especially given what's going on politically in my country.
All over the world, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, particularly in the States.
I've heard.
Well, I was just in Dublin, where women were weeping and dancing in the streets because they've felt like second-class citizens for so long, and they've watched their sisters and aunts have to travel to the UK for abortions, and they've watched people die, and they were like, we've had it. And they worked really tirelessly to pass this legislation, and I was there when it happened because I was at the Dublin Literary Festival, and I was like, this is amazing. I'm watching history happen. They just passed, they just legalized gay marriage. They just legalized abortion. They're marching into the future. Like, my country's in trouble.
Right. Right.
You guys need to help us.
So, how do I put this? I was talking to someone last night about the fact that I was going to interview you, and they said, oh, Amanda Palmer, she's amazing. Like, she's a musician. She was like, she's amazing, and I feel like she really changed the expectations of like what we can do as indie musicians or what we can do as songwriters. And she got a lot of shit for it.
I believe it.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah. I don't know if you've heard. I wonder when you give so much of yourself, even the smallest bit of criticism, even the smallest Facebook comment, even an article from a blogger or something like that, is it going to sting a little bit more because it's more about your real life?
What do you mean?
Just because if you write art, if you write a song and you don't tell anybody anything about it, or you would then, if someone says they don't like it, I mean, what are you going to do? Whatever. I wonder if you would write something that's about an abortion or about suicide, the death of a friend, and they don't like it. Does it sting a little bit more?
No. Weirdly, it doesn't. And that's such a good question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. If you're a good artist, it doesn't matter how direct your songwriting is. It means an immense amount to you, whether or not you understand exactly what I'm talking about.
It means something to me, the listener, you mean?
No, it means something to you as the writer.
Okay.
When you sit down and write a song, whether you're, direct Bob Dylaning it or you're, hyper poetry, psychedelic, I don't really understand. You're like the Thomas Pynchon of songwriting.
I feel that way with Jeff Tweedy sometimes. I go like, what? I don't really know what he's talking about here. He just said aquarium, fish, blue, yes.
Yeah, maybe Radiohead's another good example.
Yeah, maybe
like
so.
A lot of the songs you're just like, oh,
yeah,
sounds fascinating, but no idea what you mean, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
The point is there's a whole spectrum, and also artists dance around that spectrum.
Of course.
But what I meant to say is, as the artist, the song holds an entire meaning to you, irrespective of that spectrum.
Right.
And so if you don't like my song, it doesn't matter if the song was direct or covered in psychedelia. It's going to hurt right around the same place, right around the same way.
And it does, hey?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that probably varies from songwriter to songwriter.
Yeah.
As a woman who's taken a lot of criticism for being oversharey or too dramatic or, too whatever, throw in an adjective, too attention-getting, it's taken me a long time to realize that, like, almost all of that criticism that's been leveled at me is basically just like the definition of an artist most of the time.
Right.
And there's something changing about that right now in the cultural dialogue that I actually really appreciate.
What's that?
Women are not getting quite as shouted down for just standing up and saying, this is how it feels.
Yeah.
This is how it is. And I'm not going to couch it for you and apologize 9 times before I say it and then apologize 9 times after. I'm just going to tell you.
Yeah.
I think I have something to add here.
That's good. That's positive.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
And I think it's infectious. The more women who do it, doesn't matter if they're artists or journalists or not even, people with social platforms, just women simply telling the truth shamelessly is spreading like a wildfire throughout culture. And every time the bar gets raised, it stays there.
You can talk directly to your fans now too, right? I think about shows like this, which I'm happy to do it, and it's a big show, and people listen to it and all that. But there was a time, actually, I made a joke about Corey Hart earlier. He did say this to me. I said, like, how did you feel? Like, he was really famous. I don't know how famous he was in the U.S., but he was like uber famous in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Sunglasses at Night, right?
Yeah. I know the song. I am from the 80s.
I'm just going to sing it. Oh, yeah.
Are you going to sing?
I think I know the hook. Do it with me. I wear my sunglasses at night so I can,
We're going on the road.
I'm in.
Me and you.
I'm really cheap. I'm really, really cheap. And all I'm going to do is
We just harmonized.
It was pretty good.
It was pretty beautiful.
Folk musician, right? That's all I got are thirds and fifths. That's all I got.
That's all there is, really.
Yeah,
it's just
thirds
math.
and fifths and songs about the railroad. That's all I have. Okay, so he told me that you can buy, back in his day, he had to go on MTV, he had to go on Much Music because that was the only way he could talk to his fans. Now,
Sure.
when you're someone like yourself, you can pick up your phone,
direct.
talk to them immediately. You can have a Patreon
Yeah.
and deal with them directly. Just as we were talking about criticism of your songs coming from critics and folks like that, do you then feel beholden in a different way to your fans when they're having that much of a direct impact on your life?
I sort of do, but not in a negative way. I feel beholden to them to try to be as authentic as possible, But luckily, I enjoy doing that. So it never really feels
I understand. Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a task. And also, the interesting thing about the way I grew up and growing up in 80s land and MTV, Corey Heartland, is we were sort of fed this story about what it meant to become a successful rock star, musician person, which is like you would be here, people would worship you, if you gained an audience, if you made it, if you got famous, and they would be this giant faceless them, these people just sort of standing in judgment of your art and work. And you would be here alone on stage, and you would have to do your rock star job and look really cool. And that was the gig, unless you were a folk musician or a punk, in which case you understood that was the opposite of what it was about.
Yeah, you were part of a community.
You were part of a tribe, and your job was to serve the tribe, and their job was to help you out, and everyone did it together.
Right.
And I was sort of raised by both of those lineages. And when I got into my 20s and I started the Dresden Dolls, I knew exactly which way I wanted to go. I had no interest in MTV, stardom, celebrity world.
It was coming for you. I mean, it was there. It was available to you.
I mean, I'm a good enough songwriter that if I at 25 had been like, give me an amazing outfit, I am going to be a pop star, I probably could have pulled it off.
Yeah.
But I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to be connected. I wanted to hang out with a bunch of people. And so, I started my blog in 2000. And the people who follow me and are my fans, which is a word I don't even really like, they're my family. They're my tribe. A lot of those people have been with me since the beginning. Some people just showed up 6 months ago. Some people saw my TED Talk. Some people, don't even want to listen to my music because they're not really music people, but they just love the message and they want me to broadcast. And I'll take all of that. And I'll take all of that any day over having an arm's length relationship with a bunch of random, disconnected people. And also I have 15,000 patrons right now paying me, $3 or $4 a month.
You're like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. Or NPR.
Yeah, right.
Actually.
Right, yeah, right.
I don't know. NPR in America is like.
It's the OG Patreon.
It is the OG Patreon. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot
we're funded by the government here fully. It's sweet.
You guys are lucky.
We got it going on here.
You guys have health care.
Oh, man.
We hate you.
I know.
But this actually has a long history. Anything that a bunch of folks consider culturally important and want to see exist, they'll just kind of pitch in and make it happen, and they'll use whatever tools are at their disposal right now. And I had no idea how liberating it would be to go, oh my God, it doesn't matter if I don't sell any records. It doesn't matter if I go on CBC or not. I'll be supported no matter what I do. And that unlocked my songwriting voice in a way that I didn't even know would happen. It was like waking up from a dream and going, oh, wow, I didn't actually realize how much of the Kool-Aid I had drunk. But every time I sat down to write a song, make a record, make an artistic choice, there's always that little subconscious, you're going to have to go out and sell this. You're going to have to find a way to eventually make money.
Yeah.
And now that's gone.
Right.
It's bananas.
I can't imagine. I mean, that's what a beautiful feeling.
It's a dream.
If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with Amanda Palmer. I just got one more question for you before we kind of take a small break, and then we'll get you to play another song and all that stuff. But I was reading the other day that, and I don't know if this is true, it's one of those pseudoscience things that I'm always loath to mention on the radio, that all of our cells and everything about us replenishes after 7 years.
Oh, that's true.
So after 7 years, we're a completely different person.
Yeah, that's not pseudoscience, though. That's just how our bodies work.
You know what? I figured I'd give both options so I'd be wrong either way.
Oh, you're right.
Good. And it's meaningful to me because this album is a memoir of everything you've been through over 7 years. Do you feel like a different person?
I mean, I think a lot like the philosophers when confronted with that, if your body replenishes and there is no physical you, what is you? And like now we're tripping on acid and staring at our hands kind of moment.
Yeah.
I feel completely different and yet also very much the same. I still really identify with the teenage, 17-year-old Amanda who had an abortion and didn't tell anyone about it. I still identify with like 25-year-old Amanda who started the Dresden Dolls and was all bohemian and crazy and starry-eyed. I carry all those people with me. I don't want to let them go. I love them all. I feel a lot of compassion for those versions of myself, especially given what I've learned and looking at how much I was suffering in retrospect. But if we don't let ourselves change, we suffer a lot. I've definitely learned that.
Well, I mean, when you go through something like you've gone through, which is, you're like you mentioned, abortions, the death of a very, very close friend, suicide of friend, like it's
marriage, its
marriage,
its own tragedy, motherhood, and marriage, and my whole relationship with Neil and my best friend Anthony dying and going through 4 years of chemo with him and an ex committing suicide. But also, in a weird way, these are just the mundane goings on of life. And the more I've toured and also just the more I've lived, you start to realize that everybody on any given day sitting in the subway, every face you see, every person is going through an immense amount at any given time. And it's why the album title really, when it occurred to me, really appealed.
It was originally supposed to be called the saddest album in the world.
we were never going to really call. Maybe I thought about that seriously. In my notes to John Congleton, the producer, that's what we kept calling the record. It was going to be the saddest record in the world. And then we switched jokingly to 5 Hanky Record.
Right. But instead?
It's called There Will Be No Intermission. And that's life. It just keeps happening.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I enjoyed
and
this.
Here we are.
I'm happy we got
on the radio.
I'm happy we got a chance to talk.
Me too.